Ava Gardner shows how awful Frank Sinatra was. Split up. There was a birth. Ava Lavinia Gardner on December 24, 1922, in Grabtown, North Carolina, a small farming town. The seventh child in a poor but close-knit family, Ava Lavinia Gardner was the youngest. Her early years were hard, especially after her beloved father died when she was only 15. Ava was raised with a strong sense of freedom and determination, even though her family had money problems. These traits would later serve her well in the tough world of show business. Ava's rise to fame started almost by accident. In 1941, her skilled photographer brother-in-law put up a picture of her in the window of his New York studio. A person from Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer saw the picture and was interested in Ava. Soon she signed a deal with one of Hollywood's biggest studios. At first, she was only cast in small roles, usually as a foreign beauty or a ghost in B-movies. But her stunning good looks, beautiful green eyes, and magnetic personality quickly caught the attention of producers and directors. Ava had trouble with pronunciation because she had a thick Southern accent. But MGM put her in acting and speech classes to help her get better, and her hard work paid off. In 1946, she got her big break when she played Jane Doe opposite Burt Lancaster in the famous noir movie The Killers. Both audiences and critics loved the movie, and Gardner's role as the femme fatale Kitty Collins made her famous all over the world. After that, she became one of the most sought-after actors in the business. Her roles in Moambo, 1953, for which she was nominated for an Academy Award, as well as Barefoot Contessa, 1954, Showboat, 1951, and On the Beach, 1959, made her famous. She often played parts that were seductive and mysterious, but she also showed depth, vulnerability, and complexity, showing that she was much more than just a pretty face. After she turned 60, Ava went to Spain and then London to get away from the spotlight and live a quieter life. Even though she played smaller parts, she was still in important movies like The Night of the Iguana, 1964, and Earthquake, 1974, which showed that her beauty and talent had not changed with age. In 1986, she had a stroke that left her unable to function, but she refused to let it make her feel alone. She kept up with friends and family and thought about her amazing life with humility and humor. Her autobiography, Ava, My Story, came out not long before she died. It was an honest, thoughtful, and often moving look at her life, which was full of happiness, sadness, love, and survival. In the early 1940s, when Ava Gardner moved to Los Angeles, her stunning good looks and Southern charm quickly caught the attention of people in Hollywood. Fast forward a few months, and she meets Mickey Rooney, another MGM contract player who was also a big star at the time. Rooney fell in love with Gardner right away. He is best known for playing the good-hearted teen Andy Hardy in the wildly popular Andy Hardy movie series. There was a big age gap between them. Rooney was 21 and had already worked in a lot of movies, while Gardner was only 19 and was new to the business. After a very short courtship, they got married on January 10, 1942. Their wedding wasn't as fancy as one might think for two Hollywood stars. Instead, it was a quiet event held in Ballard, California, a small town in the middle of nowhere. The place was carefully picked out not for romance, but for privacy. Louis B. Mayer, the head of MGM Studios, was always looking out for his company's marketable pictures. He was afraid that if Rooney's young fans found out that their favorite actor, Andy Hardy, was married, it would hurt his appeal and, in turn, hurt the ongoing film series' ability to make money. At that time, companies had a lot of control over how their stars were seen by the public. Anything that could ruin a clean or well-kept image was seen as a big risk. Gardner and Rooney's marriage fell apart very quickly. Gardner, who was still a girl, was stressed out by Rooney's strange behavior and the attention she was getting as his wife. Even though their relationship was short, it was very rough. Gardner asked for a divorce in 1943, less than 2 years after they got married. She used mental cruelty as a formal reason, which at the time meant a lot of different kinds of emotional and psychological abuse. Gardner later told close friends and in interviews and her book that the real reasons for the breakup were Rooney's problem gambling, his habit of sleeping with other women, and his general lack of maturity. Even though Rooney had lied to Gardner, he chose not to publicly criticize him or hurt his image. She didn't say anything bad about him in public, and she never questioned the picture of the clean-cut American boy that people had of him from his role as Andy Hardy on TV. She did this to protect both his job and her own rising star in Hollywood. His second marriage was also short and troubled, but it was very different from the first one. She married the well-known jazz singer and bandleader Artie Shaw in 1945. Shaw had been married to Lana Turner, another MGM star, and was known for having a very sharp mind and a moody personality. Gardner was interested in Shaw because he was sophisticated and intellectually deep, which were very different from Rooney's childish personality. But the things about Shaw that made her like him also made their marriage difficult. Shaw was known to be bossy and condescending, and it was said that he made fun of Gardner's lack of schooling and tried to change her into someone who met his high standards. Their marriage ended in less than a year after a lot of fights over power and mental distance. Gardner later said that she liked Shaw's ideas and music, but that the mental cost of living with his criticism was too much for her to handle. Frank Sinatra, the famous singer and actor, was her most passionate and long-lasting boyfriend. When they met, Sinatra was still married to his first wife, Nancy Barbato, and they had 3 children together. The affair between Gardner and Sinatra was quickly written about in gossip columns and tabloids, which caused a scandal that destroyed both of their careers. Sinatra made the controversial choice to split Nancy and marry Gardner, even though many people, including gossip queens Hedda Hopper and Luella Parsons, the Hollywood elite, and even the Catholic Church, were against it. From 1951 until 1957, they were married. During that time, they were deeply in love but often had problems with each other. Gardner later wrote in her book that Sinatra was the love of her life, and that their relationship was both very passionate and very complicated. She respected his skill, his charm, and the fact that he was open and honest, but their relationship was unstable. Gardner, who was already a big name in movies around the world, was known for being independent and having a strong personality. Sinatra, whose career was in decline in the early 1950s, was dealing with feelings of not being good enough and jealousy. Their marriage was full of fights, public rants, and painful attempts to get back together. There were 2 strong personalities, coming together, but they were both scared and stressed out about their fame. At the time they got married, Sinatra's career was going downhill fast. Back in the 1940s, he was a big star and hit the charts, but now he wasn't liked by the public, and record labels and movie companies hadn't hired him. Gardner saw both his ability and his hopelessness and used her considerable power to help him get his career back on track. She asked studio boss Harry Kahn, who was in charge of Columbia Pictures, to consider Sinatra for a part in From Here to Eternity, 1953, a dark World War II drama based on James Jones's book of the same name. Sinatra was cast as the important, private Angelo Maggio, even though the studio and Hollywood insiders were against it. His performance was praised by many and won him the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. This critical success sparked a new start for his acting career and a stunning return to music, which would become the most popular part of his career. Gardner's help behind the scenes was very important to this change, but she didn't get much credit for it at the time. There was still a lot of fighting and sadness in their marriage. In her autobiography, Gardner wrote that she got pregnant twice while she was married to Sinatra, but chose to end both of them. Even though it was a personal choice, the rules that companies put on female stars during the golden age of Hollywood had a big impact on it. MGM had strict contract terms that made it illegal for actresses to get pregnant, especially if it got in the way of film schedules or keeping up their glamorous image. Gardner later felt sad and angry when she thought about how actors didn't have much freedom or control over their lives and bodies during this time. By 1954, Gardner filed for divorce because they were fighting all the time, which was putting a lot of stress on their relationship and making them less compatible. Even though they were no longer married legally in 1957, they stayed close emotionally for years afterward. Sinatra was still crazy about Gardner after they broke up. He talked about her a lot in interviews and told his friends that she was the only woman he really loved. When it came to Gardner, she never got married again. Even though she was in other relationships, the years she spent with Sinatra were the most deeply felt. Their love story is still one of the most famous and complicated in Hollywood history. It was full of passion, pain, and dedication to each other. Ava Gardner talks about how awful Frank Sinatra and divorce are. During the golden age of Hollywood, Ava Gardner was one of the most beautiful screen sirens. Her real life seemed to mirror the passion and turmoil of the parts she played on screen. But behind her stunning good looks and seductive voice was a woman who was going through a lot of mental pain. This was painfully clear in the way her marriage to the famous singer Frank Sinatra fell apart. Their relationship, which was once hailed as one of the sexiest and most scandalous in show business, turned into a battleground of jealousy, sadness, and emotional destruction over time. In later years, Gardner talked with striking candor about the horrible things that happened to her during their marriage and the split that followed. This showed a raw vulnerability that was very different from how she usually appeared in public. From the start, Ava and Frank's relationship was full of problems. Sinatra was still married to his first wife, Nancy Barbato, when he met Ava in the late 1940s. His affair with her made national news. They put a lot of pressure on them, and Ava was called a homewrecker. While they were deeply attracted to each other and emotionally connected, their passionate relationship was tainted by bad habits and angry outbursts. Sinatra was charming and magnetic, but he could be possessive, insecure, and prone to explosive jealousy episodes. Ava, on the other hand, was known for her wild spirit and freedom. Gardner later said that even when they were dating, fights would get very violent, with doors slamming, charges being yelled, and angry outbursts. Their link was electric, but it could easily catch fire. Many people thought that their marriage would make things better for both of them when it happened in 1951. It instead set off a storm of deeper inner turmoil. Gardner would later say that there was a lot of tension and distrust in their home life. In the early years of their marriage, Frank's job was not going well. His voice was hurting, and fewer people liked him. Gardner, on the other hand, was at the top of her game. She had been in a lot of big movies and was praised all over the world. Sinatra's hurt pride and work insecurity made him even more dependent on Ava and made him feel even worse about not being good enough. Gardner once told her that he needed her in ways that were too heavy for her to carry, and that it was too hard on her emotions to keep trying to pull him out of his depression. A lot of their fights were about cheating, whether it was real or imagined. It was later said that Gardner wasn't always faithful, and reports of affairs with bullfighters and co-stars followed her around while she was married. Many times, Sinatra lost it because he was jealous and scared. Ava said that their fights were hurting her soul, and she admitted that she worried about her mental health sometimes. Even though he never hurt her physically, she talked about how his anger and possessiveness made her feel. She talked about how he would show up at film sets or hotel rooms at night and demand to know where she was. This would make her feel scared and embarrassed in front of her co-workers and friends. Gardner insisted that she had never stopped loving Sinatra, even though their marriage was bad. That long-lasting love made the breakup hurt even more. In 1953, they were no longer married, but it took a few more years for the divorce to be completed. During that time, Gardner moved to Spain to get away from the harsh light of the American media and find some peace. But the mental scars of Her marriage stayed with her even though she was far away. She said she had times when she felt very alone, depressed, and like drinking. She wrote in her diaries that she woke up in Madrid crying uncontrollably because she had lost the man she thought was her soulmate. Even though they were no longer legally married after the split, she still felt emotionally connected to him for a long time. Ava had a very moving moment when she talked about how painful it was to realize that love alone could not save a relationship. What they had said about each other worried her for the rest of her life. "We were two people who couldn't live together, but couldn't live without each other either. Each would go on to date other people, but they never really moved on from the other." It is said that Sinatra loved Ava forever, and that she was the love of his life. Gardner saved his gifts, letters, and photos for a long time after they broke up. A personal account of a relationship that burned strongly and badly. Ava Gardner's thoughts on her marriage to Frank Sinatra were not meant to point fingers. Instead, they were meant to show the sad beauty of a love that was both deep and harmful. She talked about how horrible their divorce was, but she also talked about how close they were, and how fame, money, and even sadness could never fully break that bond. Being honest about the emotional scars that relationship left behind gave us a rare and personal look into the real woman behind the legend, a woman who loved deeply, lost terribly, and got through it all with grace. In 1986, Gardner had a stroke. Even though she could pay for her own medical bills, Frank Sinatra wanted to pay for her trip to see an expert in the U.S., and she let him set up a private plane with medical staff. The disease killed her on January 25, 1990, in Westminster, London, England. She was 67 years old. Gardner was buried in Sunset Memorial Park in Smithfield, North Carolina, on January 29th. She was buried next to her brothers and their parents, Jonas and Molly Gardner. The Ava Gardner Museum, which opened in 1996, is close by.